costs to become a legend on your wedding day, you are in exactly the right place. Before we get into it, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me which bride you think earns the #1 spot, because trust me, the ending of this list is going to surprise you. Let's get into it. Number 40. Emily Ratajkowski and Sebastian Bear-McLeod. We are starting this list with a plot twist. Every other name on here spent a fortune. Emily Ratajkowski spent $200 for her 2018 courthouse wedding to Sebastian Bear-McLeod. The model and actress threw on a mustard yellow two-piece suit from Zara, the kind of outfit you could buy on your lunch break and wear to a normal Tuesday. And yet, here it is, opening a list about legendary wedding fashion. Why? Because the internet could not stop talking about it. In an era where celebrity brides were spending 6 and 7 figures on custom couture, Ratajkowski's $200 fast fashion moment became its own kind of statement. Proof that a wedding look can become iconic for being defiantly unbothered rather than expensive. There was no train, no veil, no months of fittings, just a model who understood exactly how much attention a deliberately anti-glamorous choice would generate, and who reportedly decided on the outfit only days before the ceremony itself. It is the exception that makes every other entry on this list look even more extravagant by comparison. And that contrast alone, the $200 suit sitting right next to the multi-million-dollar gowns still to come, earns it a spot in wedding fashion history. Number 39. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. For her 2006 wedding to Keith Urban in Sydney, Nicole Kidman chose a Balenciaga gown estimated at around $20,000, a relatively modest number by list standards, especially for an Oscar winner at the absolute peak of her career. The dress itself was quiet, elegant, and a little unexpected for a star of Kidman's caliber. An ivory silk organza gown designed by Nicolas Ghesquière with a fitted puff-sleeve bodice and clean lines, none of the dramatic embellishment we will see later on this list. But that restraint is exactly the point. Kidman had spent years in the spotlight in structured, statement-making red carpet gowns from major houses, so choosing something this understated for her actual wedding day felt like a deliberate exhale. A chance to look like herself, rather than a character on a poster. The ceremony itself was small and largely shielded from the press, in keeping with the same understated instinct that shaped the dress. It became a quietly influential look for brides who wanted elegance without excess, proving that a legendary wedding dress does not always need a legendary price tag to leave an impression. Sometimes the opposite. The deliberate absence of spectacle is exactly what makes people remember it years and years later. Number 38. Mariah Carey and Tommy Mottola. Long before she was crowned the Queen of Christmas, Mariah Carey was a 23-year-old pop star marrying music executive Tommy Mottola in 1993 at St. Thomas Episcopal Church in New York City, in a ceremony so lavish it was compared at the time to a royal wedding. Her Vera Wang gown, reportedly around $25,000, was enormous in every sense. A voluminous ball gown with a dramatic 27-foot train that took up practically the entire aisle and required assistance to arrange it before she could even begin her walk. This was one of Vera Wang's earliest celebrity bridal moments, years before she became the default name in luxury wedding fashion. And Carey's dress helped put her on the map in a very real way, launching a professional relationship between the designer and the pop star that would continue for years. The guest list included Barbra Streisand, and the wedding itself became a symbol of 90s music industry glamour, big hair, bigger trains, and a very big love of drama. The kind of wedding that felt engineered for magazine covers as much as for the couple themselves. A spectacle built to be remembered as much as it was built to be lived. Number 37. Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt. Jennifer Aniston's 2000 wedding to Brad Pitt produced one of the most reproduced wedding photos of the era. A black and white shot of the couple that ended up plastered across magazine covers, calendars, and eventually the early internet for years afterward. Her Lawrence Steele gown, estimated around $50,000, was glass-beaded silk and satin, simple in silhouette but rich in texture, finished with a dramatic floor-length veil that framed her face perfectly for the cameras and softened the entire look without overwhelming it. At the height of Friends mania, with Aniston arguably the most famous television actress on the planet, this was arguably the most photographed wedding dress of the year, and it set a template for the clean, minimalist bridal silhouette that would dominate celebrity weddings for years afterward, well before minimalism became a defined bridal trend with its own name. Sometimes a legend is not about how much a dress costs, it is about how many times the image gets reprinted, circulated, and referenced years after the fact. And this one has been reprinted more than almost any other wedding photo of its decade. Number 36, Hailey Bieber and Justin Bieber. When Hailey Bieber married Justin Bieber in 2019, she skipped traditional bridal entirely and went straight to the late Virgil Abloh, the Off-White founder and Louis Vuitton menswear director, for a custom gown estimated between $50,000 and $100,000. The off-the-shoulder lace dress had a figure-hugging mermaid silhouette, but the detail everyone remembers is the veil, embroidered with the words, "Till death do us part," in bold signature off-white lettering. A streetwear approach to a bridal accessory that had never really been done at this level of visibility before. Bieber also wore other custom gowns for the reception, but it is this Abloh piece that fashion critics point to as the moment high-fashion streetwear officially crossed over into mainstream bridal design. It signaled a changing of the guard in celebrity bridal fashion, away from traditional alliés and toward the streetwear and high-fashion crossover designers who were reshaping the entire industry at the time. Abloh passed away 2 years later, making this dress an even more significant and bittersweet piece of his design legacy. A wedding gown that now doubles as one of the final chapters in an extraordinary career. Number 35. Nikki Hilton and James Rothschild. Nikki Hilton's 2015 wedding to banker James Rothschild took place at Kensington Palace Gardens in London, and her Valentino gown, reportedly around $77,000, delivered exactly the kind of old-world romance the setting demanded. The dress featured intricate couture lace detailing, long sleeves, and a traditional silhouette that nodded to classic European bridal style rather than the more modern, body-conscious gowns favored by many of her contemporaries at the time. As the sister of Paris Hilton and part of one of the most photographed families of the 2000s, Nikki's choice of a timeless, almost demure gown surprised people who expected something flashier, closer to her sister's more maximalist personal brand. That restraint is exactly what made fashion critics take her seriously as a style figure in her own right, that entirely separate from the family name she grew up under, and the dress remains a frequently cited example of understated European bridal elegance done at the highest possible level, quietly influential in a way louder gowns rarely manage to be. Number 34. Madonna and Guy Ritchie. Madonna's 2000 wedding to director Guy Ritchie at Skibo Castle in Scotland included a Stella McCartney gown with an estimated value around $80,000, though the true cost has always been the subject of some speculation, since so few details of the ceremony were ever officially confirmed by either party. The dress was structured ivory silk, in keeping with McCartney's design philosophy, a far cry from the elaborate stage costumes and conical bras Madonna had built her career on for nearly 2 decades by that point. What makes this dress legendary is not the price tag, but the pairing. One of pop culture's most provocative icons, dressed by a designer who was, at the time, building her reputation after leading Chloé. The wedding also marked Madonna's rebrand from provocateur to English countryside aristocrat, complete with an antique diamond tiara and a private Scottish castle rented out entirely for the occasion, and the understated gown was very much a deliberate, considered part of that entire reinvention. Number 33. Madonna and Sean Penn. 15 years before Skibo Castle, a 26-year-old Madonna married actor Sean Penn, on her birthday in 1985 in a lavish Malibu ceremony that was famously invaded by paparazzi helicopters circling overhead, forcing the couple to shout their vows over the noise of the rotors. The original dress did not have a confirmed retail cost from the time, since it predates full crossover into mainstream fashion collaboration, but decades later, it resurfaced at auction and sold for $81,250 in 2014, a striking figure for a dress that was never framed as couture in the first place. The wedding itself became legendary for its chaos as much as its fashion, with tabloid photographers reportedly hiding in nearby bushes and even attempting to access the property to get a usable shot. The dress endures as a genuine piece of 1980s pop culture history, one that proved Madonna's cultural footprint from her wedding day would only grow larger and larger with time, right alongside the rest of her already legendary career. Number 32. Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York. Before she became one of the most talked-about royals of her generation, Sarah Ferguson married Prince Andrew in 1986, wearing a gown by British designer Linka Sierrock that reportedly cost around $45,000 at the time, or roughly $107,000 adjusted for inflation. The ivory silk gown took 4 months to construct and featured a dramatic 17.5-foot train embroidered with thistles and bumblebees, symbols tied to her personal heraldry and new royal title, a level of personalized symbolism that few royal gowns before or since have matched, quite so literally. It was one of the last truly old-fashioned royal wedding spectacles before the more scrutinized, more modern royal weddings of the following decades, complete with a horse-drawn carriage procession through central London and thousands of well-wishers lining the route. The dress remains a touchstone for maximalist royal bridal design and a reminder of just how differently royal weddings were covered and consumed before the internet turned every single stitch into a headline within the hour. Number 31. Victoria Beckham and David Beckham. When Posh Spice married football icon David Beckham in 1999 at Luttrellstown Castle in Ireland, she wore a champagne-colored Vera Wang gown, reportedly costing around $100,000, paired, unforgettably, with an 18-karat gold crown, an accessory choice that fashion writers are still referencing more than 2 decades later. The strapless silk ball gown featured a sculpted corseted bodice designed by Vera Wang and a sweeping train that required flights between the United Kingdom and New York during the fitting process to get every single detail exactly right before the big day. The wedding was pure late 90s maximalism, matching purple outfits for the reception, ornate thrones for the couple to sit on during the meal, and a level of tabloid coverage rarely seen before that moment in British celebrity culture. It remains one of the most referenced celebrity weddings of the era, and the crown alone made absolutely sure nobody would ever forget it. A literal declaration that the newly minted Posh and Becks considered themselves British royalty in their own right, crown and all. Number 30. Ariana Grande and Dalton Gomez. Ariana Grande's intimate 2021 wedding to real estate agent Dalton Gomez featured a Vera Wang gown, estimated between $100,000 and $150,000. A slinky, minimalist silhouette crafted from lily-white silk charmeuse with an empire waist and a dramatic sculpted open back that moved beautifully whenever she walked. What makes this dress legendary is the backstory. Wang had reportedly promised Grande she would design her wedding gown 3 years earlier, at the 2018 Met Gala, long before an engagement was even on the table. A promise both women apparently remembered and followed through on when the moment finally arrived. The wedding itself was kept almost entirely private, with fewer than 20 guests and no advance media coverage whatsoever, a rarity for a star of Grande's fame, which only made the eventual reveal of the dress feel even more like a genuine fashion event rather than a publicity rollout planned months in advance. Number 29. Jessica Biel and Justin Timberlake. For her 2012 wedding to Justin Timberlake in Italy, Jessica Biel broke from bridal tradition entirely, choosing a custom blush pink Giambattista Valli haute couture gown, estimated at over $100,000 instead of the expected white. Biel later described the choice as a leap of faith, and the dress, with its voluminous tiered ruffles, fitted bodice, and romantic, almost storybook silhouette, ended up sparking a genuine shift in bridal fashion trends that lasted years beyond her own wedding day. Colored wedding gowns had existed before, certainly, but Biel's pink volley moment is widely credited as one of the dresses that made blush and pastel bridal looks mainstream again for a persona. A list brides who wanted something softer than stark white, without ever losing any of the drama a proper couture ball gown demands from its wearer. Number 28. Elizabeth Taylor and Conrad Nicky Hilton Jr. In 1950, 18-year-old Elizabeth Taylor married hotel heir Nicky Hilton in a dress gifted to her by MGM, designed by the studio's chief costume designer, Helen Rose. At the time, the dress reportedly cost around $1,500, a studio investment in publicity as much as fashion, since Taylor's wedding was treated almost like a film premiere, complete with fans lining the streets outside the church hoping for a glimpse of the young star. The seed pearl-encrusted satin gown featured a built-in corset for a dramatically cinched waist, a silhouette Rose would go on to reuse in several of Taylor's film costumes over the following years, blurring the line between her on-screen and off-screen glamour. Decades later, in 2013, the gown sold at a Christie's auction in London for $187,931, more than double its highest pre-sale estimate. The auction house called it inextricably tied to the golden age of Hollywood, and it remains one of the clearest examples on this list of a dress whose true value only became apparent generations after the wedding itself, and whose brief 8-month marriage to Hilton did nothing to diminish its legendary status. Number 27. Melania Knauss and Donald Trump. Melania Knauss married Donald Trump in 2005 at Mar-a-Lago in a custom Christian Dior gown designed by John Galliano, reportedly costing around $100,000, part of a wedding that cost an estimated $2.5 million overall, once every detail was accounted for. The gown, made from 90 meters of white satin and covered in more than 1,500 crystals and pearls, took Dior artisans over 500 hours to hand embroider, a level of craftsmanship typically reserved for the house's runway showpieces, rather than private commissions for an individual client. It was one of the last major Galliano designs before his high-profile departure from the house years later, and the wedding itself, with 350 guests in a newly renovated Mar-a-Lago ballroom, became one of the most extravagantly documented celebrity weddings of the 2000s. A genuine snapshot of pre-recession American excess captured right before the culture shifted dramatically. Reports at the time noted the gown weighed a significant amount given the density of the embroidery and beading involved, and Galliano was said to have overseen several rounds of adjustments personally to ensure it moved correctly during the ceremony, rather than simply looking impressive while standing still. Number 26. Princess Eugenie and Jack Brooksbank. Princess Eugenie's 2018 wedding gown, designed by British duo Peter Pilato and Christopher DeVos, reportedly cost around $260,000, but the real headline was not the price, it was the neckline. Eugenie specifically requested a low back design to reveal her surgical scar from a childhood operation for scoliosis, turning a royal wedding gown into a quiet, deliberate statement about visibility and self-acceptance, rather than an attempt to hide anything from the cameras watching her every move. It was a striking departure from the more modest, high-necked gowns worn by other royal brides before her. Complete with embroidered symbols representing places significant to her life, woven directly into the fabric of the skirt. It turned what could have been just another royal wedding dress into one remembered for its meaning as much as its craftsmanship, and it opened up a broader conversation about visibility and body neutrality within the notoriously image-conscious institution of the British royal family. Number 25. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Meghan Markle's 2018 wedding to Prince Harry actually involved two dresses, both instantly iconic in their own right. The ceremony gown, designed by Claire Waite-Keller for Givenchy, reportedly cost around $265,000 and required roughly 3,900 hours of handwork. A boat neck silk Katie design so clean and architectural that Waite-Keller described it as capturing the modern codes of the house while still feeling timeless enough for a royal occasion. For the evening reception, Markle changed into a halter neck Stella McCartney gown, reportedly over $157,000. A soft, minimalist silk crepe dress that drew immediate comparisons to Carolyn Bessette Kennedy's famously understated 1996 wedding look. Together, the two dresses turned Markle's wedding into a full fashion event with two completely different legendary moments, one deeply traditional and formal, the other relaxed and modern, mirroring the two different worlds she was stepping between on that single day. Number 24. Catherine Zeta-Jones and Michael Douglas. When Catherine Zeta-Jones married Michael Douglas in 2000 at New York's Plaza Hotel, she wore a Christian Lacroix couture gown. Its exact price never publicly confirmed, though industry estimates for Lacroix couture at the time regularly ran into six figures, given the house's reputation for elaborate, labor-intensive construction techniques rarely used elsewhere. The dress featured dramatic volume and rich star-like detailing, typical of Lacroix's maximalist, theatrical approach to design. A fitting choice for a wedding that also generated headlines over the couple's 25-year age gap and a guest list stacked with Hollywood royalty, including reports that press access to photographs was tightly controlled and sold exclusively to a single magazine for a reported $1 million. Because so few verified details about the dress's construction and cost survive in reliable records, this entry earns its place on legend status and cultural memory as much as documented price. One of a handful on this list where the story outlasted the paper trail entirely. Number 23. Julianne Hough and Brooks Leach. Julianne Hough's 2017 wedding to hockey player Brooks Leach featured a custom Marchesa gown, a strapless, structured design with a sweetheart neckline and a dramatic train, though Marchesa never publicly disclosed the dress's exact cost to press covering the event. What is well documented is Hough's reception change, a much bolder pearl and crystal-beaded bodysuit under a sheer tulle skirt and cape, a striking contrast to the traditional ceremony look and a nod to her background as a professional dancer and choreographer used to costume changes between performances. As a professional dancer, Hough approached her wedding day almost like a two-act performance, and the pairing of a classic Marchesa gown with an avant-garde reception look became a genuine talking point in bridal fashion circles that year, inspiring a small trend of celebrity brides embracing bolder reception looks rather than simply repeating their ceremony gown for the rest of the night. Number 22. Sophia Richie and Elliot Grange. Sophia Richie's 2023 wedding to music executive Elliot Grange in the south of France featured a hand-beaded Chanel gown, its exact price never made public, though the level of embellishment alone signaled serious haute couture investment well beyond anything found in ready-to-wear pricing. The dress became an instant viral sensation, arguably one of the most searched and screenshotted celebrity wedding looks of the entire year. Credited with reviving interest in classic, quiet luxury bridal silhouettes, after years of modern cutouts dominating the conversation among younger celebrity brides. Richie's wedding week, with multiple outfit changes across several days of celebrations, engagement party looks, rehearsal dinner looks, and the final gown itself, turned into its own extended fashion moment that dominated fashion media coverage for weeks on end, and this Chanel gown was the crown jewel of the whole affair. Number 21. Kourtney Kardashian and Travis Barker. Kourtney Kardashian's 2022 wedding to Travis Barker in Portofino, Italy, was hosted entirely by Dolce & Gabbana, who also designed her now famous Alta Moda gown, reportedly costing around $500,000 for the one-of-a-kind piece. The one-of-a-kind silk lace and satin mini dress leaned into corset and lingerie-inspired detailing. But the true showstopper was the veil, embroidered with an image of the Virgin Mary and the words, "Family, Loyalty, Respect." A direct nod to one of Barker's own tattoos and a deeply personal touch on an otherwise maximalist Italian fashion house production. It was an intensely personal, almost rebellious take on bridal fashion from a family already famous for reshaping red carpet norms, complete with white lace gloves and matching lace pumps, finishing the entire look. It firmly cemented the trend of ultra-short, ultra-provocative wedding dresses among a new generation of brides who wanted their gown to feel like a fashion statement first. Alright, we are 20 entries deep, which means we are exactly halfway through this list, and honestly, we have not even gotten to the 7-figure gowns yet. If you are enjoying this so far, Now is the perfect time to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the rest of the countdown, and drop a comment letting me know which dress has surprised you the most up to this point. Okay, let's keep going, because the price tags are about to get a lot more serious from here on out. Number 20. Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. Kim Kardashian's 2014 wedding to Kanye West in Florence, Italy, featured a custom Givenchy gown designed by Riccardo Tisci, a close friend of the couple, reportedly costing around $500,000 for the fully custom piece. The long-sleeved lace dress featured sheer paneling, a sheer cutout back, and a sweeping cathedral-length train. And within minutes of the first wedding photos hitting the internet, the gown had become one of the most talked-about bridal looks of the decade, dissected in real time across every major fashion outlet and social media platform simultaneously. Tisci designed the dress specifically around Kardashian's personal style, rather than any traditional bridal template, reportedly working from her existing wardrobe preferences, rather than a standard bridal silhouette entirely. The result helped push sheer, body-conscious lace gowns into the mainstream celebrity wedding conversation for years afterward, a template that echoes through several later entries on this very list. The wedding itself took place at the Forte di Belvedere, overlooking the city of Florence, with the ceremony held right at the fortress, and the entire event was reportedly kept under an unusually tight media blackout for a couple this famous, with guests required to surrender their phones at the entrance to prevent any images from leaking before the family's own official release. Number 19. Nicola Peltz and Brooklyn Beckham. Nicola Peltz's 2022 wedding to Brooklyn Beckham became famous for its fashion drama before it even happened. Valentino was originally chosen to design her gown, but rumors circulated regarding tension between the Peltz and Beckham families over creative control of the final look, and Peltz ultimately wore a custom Valentino haute couture gown, a dramatic, romantic design befitting the scale of her billionaire family's sprawling Palm Beach estate wedding. The exact price was never confirmed publicly, but the behind-the-scenes saga around who would design the dress and why initial plans shifted just weeks before the ceremony turned this gown into a genuine tabloid storyline that ran for months before and after the wedding itself. Proof that sometimes the drama behind a dress is just as legendary as the dress itself, regardless of what actually ends up on the receipt. Number 18. Princess Diana and Prince Charles. Princess Diana's 1981 wedding dress, designed by husband and wife team David and Elizabeth Emanuel, reportedly cost around $115,000 at the time, or close to $490,000 adjusted for today's currency. The ivory silk taffeta gown, embellished with an estimated 10,000 pearls and mother-of-pearl sequins, featured a jaw-dropping 25-foot train, the longest in royal wedding history at the time. So long it had to be carefully folded inside the glass coach before the journey to St. Paul's Cathedral in front of enormous crowds. Watched by a global television audience of hundreds of millions, it became arguably the single most influential wedding dress of the 20th century, sparking an entire decade of puffed sleeves and dramatic trains across bridal fashion worldwide, an aesthetic so associated with Diana that designers are still referencing it more than 40 years later in modern bridal collections. The Emanuels kept the design a closely guarded secret, right up until the wedding day itself, going so far as to cover the windows of their studio to prevent anyone from photographing the gown in progress, a level of secrecy that only intensified public anticipation in the weeks leading up to the ceremony. Few dresses on this entire list carry the sheer cultural weight of this one. Number 17. Jacqueline Bouvier and John F. Kennedy. Jacqueline Bouvier's 1953 wedding gown was designed by Anne Lowe, a Black American designer who, despite dressing some of the most powerful families in the country, rarely received public credit for her work during her lifetime. A slight fashion historians have worked hard to correct in recent years through renewed academic and museum attention. The ivory silk taffeta gown, with its portrait neckline and full, sculpted bouffant skirt, took over 2 months and roughly 50 yards of fabric to construct, and disaster nearly struck when a pipe burst in Lowe's studio just 10 days before the wedding, destroying most of the fabric and forcing her to remake the dress almost entirely from scratch at her own expense. Working around the clock to finish in time for the ceremony. The dress itself was not extravagantly priced for its era, but its cultural value has only grown since, both as one of the most reproduced wedding looks in American history and as a long overdue recognition point for Lowe's largely uncredited genius, a designer now finally being taught in fashion history courses alongside her more famous contemporaries. Lowe reportedly never told the Bouvier family about the flood that nearly destroyed her work, quietly absorbing the cost of remaking the entire gown rather than risk the wedding being delayed or the story becoming a distraction from the bride herself. It is a piece of the story that makes the finished dress, elegant and seemingly effortless in every surviving photograph, feel even more remarkable once you know just how close it came to never making it to the church on time at all. Number 16. Priscilla Beaulieu and Elvis Presley. Priscilla Presley's 1967 wedding to Elvis at the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas is one of the strangest entries on this entire list, because despite marrying one of the biggest stars on the planet, she wore a white chiffon and lace gown she designed herself with input from her mother's friend, rather than commissioning a major couture house for the occasion. For years, rumors circulated that the dress had been bought off the rack under a pseudonym to avoid media leaks. An origin story Priscilla herself cleared up in later interviews when discussing how the intimate, fast-tracked ceremony came together. The 8-minute ceremony and its 6-tier, roughly $3,200 reception cake became far more famous than the gown's actual retail tag ever was. But that is exactly why this dress belongs here. Proof that Hollywood legend status is not always about the receipt. Sometimes it is simply about who is standing right next to you when you wear it down the aisle. Number 15. Liza Minnelli and David Guest. Liza Minnelli's 2002 wedding to producer David Guest was, by any measure, one of the most star-studded weddings in entertainment history, with Michael Jackson serving as best man and Elizabeth Taylor as maid of honor, alongside a guest list that reportedly included dozens of other major entertainment figures from across multiple generations. Minnelli's Bob Mackie gown, dazzling and heavily beaded off the shoulder in classic Mackie showbiz fashion, did not have a publicly confirmed individual price tag, but the wedding overall was rumored to cost around $3.5 million, an astonishing figure for what was, on paper, a private ceremony between two people. Mackie had dressed Minnelli for decades of stage performances by that point, and this gown carried the same maximalist, spotlight-ready energy as her concert costumes, a fitting choice for a wedding that felt less like a quiet ceremony and more like a full-scale Hollywood extravaganza. The ceremony took place at the Marble Collegiate Church in Manhattan, adding a grand, historic New York backdrop to a day that was already overflowing with celebrity spectacle from start to finish. Number 14. Chrissy Teigen and John Legend. Chrissy Teigen's 2013 wedding to John Legend on the shores of Lake Como, Italy involved not one but 3 separate Vera Wang gowns worn across the day, with an exact combined price never made public by either the designer or the couple. The ceremony look was a voluminous strapless ivory ball gown with a structured bodice and dramatic lifted tulle skirt with hand-cut petal appliques, the kind of storybook silhouette that photographed beautifully against the Italian lakeside setting and the historic villa where the ceremony itself took place. Teigen, already building her reputation as one of the most followed and relatable celebrities on social media at the time, turned her wedding into an aspirational travel and fashion moment that is still referenced by wedding planners and destination wedding hopefuls more than a decade later, with Lake Como itself seeing a documented surge in wedding bookings in the years that followed. Number 13. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Second wedding. Elizabeth Taylor appears on this list twice, and for good reason. She married 8 times across 7 marriages, and evolved from traditional white bridal wear into something far more personal and unconventional as the decades went on and her own tastes matured. For her 1975 remarriage to Richard Burton in Botswana, 16 years after her first Helen Rose gown, Taylor wore a vividly colored tie-dyed Gina Frattini gown that stood in dramatic contrast to traditional bridal white, reflecting both the era's fashion sensibilities and her own evolving, more bohemian personal style at the time. Decades later, the dress sold at auction for $62,500, a testament to how collectible Taylor's personal wardrobe had become, regardless of its original retail price at the time of purchase. This dress represents the more rebellious, artistic side of her legendary sense of style, a complete reinvention of what a wedding dress could even look like, worn for a marriage that, fittingly, would not last much longer than the previous attempt had either. Number 12. Amal Alamuddin and George Clooney. When human rights lawyer Amal Alamuddin married George Clooney in Venice in 2014, her Oscar de la Renta gown, reportedly costing around $380,000, held a heartbreaking distinction. It was the final wedding gown de la Renta personally completed before his death later that same year. The off-the-shoulder lace ball gown, embellished with pearls, beads, and delicate appliques, was later put on display at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, a rare honor for a wedding dress and a fitting tribute to a man widely considered one of the greatest American bridal designers of all time. De la Renta reportedly worked closely with Alamuddin throughout the design process, telling Vogue at her fitting that a wedding dress is the most important dress in a woman's life. And the gown stands as both a fashion triumph and a poignant final chapter in one of American fashion's most storied and celebrated careers. The wedding itself spanned several days in Venice, with multiple outfit changes and events held across the city's most historic and picturesque locations. And Clooney, already one of the most photographed men in the entire world, found himself sharing headlines that entire week, almost entirely with his new wife's wardrobe instead. Number 11. Ciara and Russell Wilson. When R&B star Ciara married Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson in 2016 at Peckforton Castle in Cheshire, England, she wore a custom Roberto Cavalli couture gown, designed personally by then creative director Peter Dundas, its exact price never publicly disclosed. The V-neck gown was constructed from layers of silk tulle, finished with delicate floral embroidery, glass beading, and chantilly lace applique, and took roughly 4 months to complete, across multiple fittings held in 3 different countries. Dundas, a close friend of Ciara's who has described designing for her as a genuine labor of love, later revealed that the gown carried a hidden detail almost nobody at the wedding even noticed. Ciara and Russell's initials were secretly embroidered into the lace at the back of her train. The wedding itself was a fairy tale affair by design, an English countryside castle, a bridal party that included Kelly Rowland and Lala Anthony, and a groom dressed in Giorgio Armani made to measure to match. Without a confirmed price tag, this entry earns its place through pure craftsmanship and story rather than a documented number, much like several other entries on this list. But few celebrity wedding gowns have been described quite so often or quite so fondly as an actual fairy tale come to life. Number 10. Kate Middleton and Prince William. Kate Middleton's 2011 wedding gown, designed by Sarah Burton for Alexander McQueen, reportedly cost somewhere around $332,000, or as much as $500,000 once adjusted for inflation. Every element of the gown was a masterclass in craftsmanship. Hand-cut lace appliques sewn by the Royal School of Needlework, whose artisans had to wash their hands every 30 minutes and change needles every 3 hours to keep the delicate fabric absolutely pristine throughout the entire process. A Victorian-inspired corseted bodice, and a nearly 9-foot train that trailed elegantly across the floor of Westminster Abbey. The dress deliberately echoed the lace sleeves and fitted silhouette of Grace Kelly's own iconic gown decades earlier, a connection Burton has spoken about openly in later interviews. And within days, bridal boutiques worldwide reported a massive surge in demand for lace-sleeved wedding dresses of every price point. It remains one of the most copied wedding gowns in modern fashion history, and arguably the single most influential royal wedding dress of the 21st century so far. To maintain absolute secrecy ahead of the wedding, the workshop reportedly operated under false project names and covered windows, much like the Emanuels had done for Diana 3 decades earlier, a tradition of royal bridal secrecy that seems to repeat itself with almost every generation. Number 9. Grace Kelly and Prince Rainier III. Before there was a Kate Middleton dress inspired by Grace Kelly, there was the original. When Hollywood star Grace Kelly married Prince Rainier III of Monaco in 1956, her wedding gown, designed by MGM's own Helen Rose, reportedly cost around $8,000 at the time, or roughly $85,000 to $100,000 today when adjusting for currency inflation. Rose herself designed it as a gift from MGM Studios in honor of their star's transition into royal life. The lace and silk gown featured a fitted bodice, long sleeves, and a soft, full skirt, and it was documented thoroughly by studio publicity teams as though it were its own film production, complete with newsreel coverage documenting the seamstresses at work in the weeks leading up to the ceremony itself. Kelly later donated the dress to the Philadelphia Museum of Art, cementing its place as one of the defining moments where Hollywood glamour and European royalty collided into a single, unforgettable image. The exact fusion this entire countdown has been building toward from the very first entry. Roughly 30 million television viewers reportedly tuned in to watch the ceremony broadcast at the time, a staggering number for 1956, and the dress itself required 36 seamstresses working for a reported 6 weeks straight to finish in time, using antique rose point lace, silk faille, and yards of tulle to construct the full skirt and veil. Number 8. Salma Hayek and François-Henri Pinault. Salma Hayek's 2009 wedding to French billionaire and caring chairman François-Henri Pinault took place at the historic Venice Opera House, Théâtre La Fenice, and her custom Balenciaga gown, designed by then creative director Nicolas Ghesquière, reportedly cost around $434,000 for the fully custom piece. Given that Hayek's husband effectively controlled some of the biggest luxury fashion houses in the world, including Balenciaga itself at the time, the dress carried an added layer of symbolism, a literal fashion dynasty being formed on the wedding day itself, inside a building far better known for hosting operas than weddings. Guests included Bono, Woody Harrelson, and Penelope Cruz, and the overall wedost was estimated at $3.5 million. Making it one of the most opulent celebrity unions of its era, and a genuine showcase of the couple's combined influence across fashion, film, and music simultaneously. Number 7. Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck. Jennifer Lopez's 2022 wedding to Ben Affleck involved not one, not two, but 3 custom Ralph Lauren gowns worn across the celebration, with a combined estimated value around $1 million for all 3 pieces together. The most dramatic of the 3 featured a feathered turtleneck bodice paired with a long, tiered skirt made from more than 1,000 individually hand-stitched handkerchiefs to create its flowing, sculptural train that trailed dramatically behind her. This was Lopez's second attempt at marrying Affleck, following their famously called-off engagement 2 decades earlier, which makes the sheer scale and drama of the eventual wedding dress feel almost like a 2-decade-long fashion statement finally being completed after all that time apart from each other. True to her own lyrics, love may not cost a thing, but apparently the wedding gowns absolutely do, and Lopez made sure every one of the 3 told a slightly different part of the story. Number 6. Victoria Swarovski and Werner Mertz. Victoria Swarovski, heiress to the Swarovski crystal empire, married businessman Werner Mertz in 2017, wearing a gown that, unsurprisingly, put the family name to full and dazzling use for the entire ceremony. Designed by Michael Cinco and reportedly valued at over $1 million, the off-the-shoulder gown was adorned with more than 500,000 individual Swarovski crystals, painstakingly hand-applied over the course of months by a dedicated team of artisans, paired with a matching crystal-embellished veil that caught the light from every conceivable angle. Given her family's connection to the brand, this dress functions almost as a walking advertisement. But it also stands as one of the most literally dazzling gowns ever created for a wedding, a genuine feat of engineering as much as fashion, considering the sheer weight, reportedly around 100 pounds, and precision required to attach 500,000 crystals to a single garment without it becoming impossible to actually walk in comfortably. The wedding took place at a cathedral in Trieste, Italy, and Swarovski, who had grown up around the family business, reportedly worked directly with Cinco's atelier to select the specific crystal cuts and finishes used throughout the gown, treating her own wedding almost like a personal showcase for the craftsmanship the family name has represented for well over a century. Number 5. Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. Queen Elizabeth II's 1947 wedding gown, designed by Norman Hartnell, is remarkable not just for its price, estimated around $40,000 at the time, but for the circumstances surrounding its creation. Post-war Britain was still under strict fabric rationing at the time, and the government had to grant Princess Elizabeth, as she was then known, 200 extra ration coupons just to allow for the gown's ivory silk and thousands of hand-sewn seed pearls and crystals. A delicate decision at the time, given how many ordinary citizens were still struggling with basic shortages of their own. The dress was famously inspired by Botticelli's Primavera, symbolizing rebirth and renewal for a nation still recovering from the devastation of the Second World War, with garlands of spring flowers embroidered directly into the silk fabric itself. Decades later, conservators have noted the historic gown is fragile and deteriorating, which only makes its documented value and cultural significance more remarkable, given how close it has come to being preserved for future generations. Number 4. Priyanka Chopra and Nick Jonas. Priyanka Chopra and Nick Jonas celebrated their 2018 wedding with a multi-day, multi-ceremony celebration at the Umaid Bhawan Palace in Jodhpur, India, blending both Western and Hindu wedding traditions across several days of events and outfit changes. For the Western-style portion of the festivities, Chopra wore a custom Ralph Lauren gown, featuring a high neckline, scalloped sleeves, and estimated 2,380,000 individual mother-of-pearl sequins, and Swarovski crystal detailing throughout the bodice and skirt of the entire garment. The show-stopping finishing touch was a 75-foot veil, one of the longest ever recorded on a celebrity bride, which required multiple handlers as she walked down the aisle, weaving global fashion history into a single garment worn on one of the most photographed wedding days of the entire decade. It remains one of the most elaborate custom celebrity wedding gowns ever created by an American designer to this day. The multi-day celebration also included a traditional mehendi, sangeet, and a Hindu ceremony, each with its own elaborate custom outfit, meaning the Ralph Lauren gown was actually just one chapter in an even larger fashion story, spanning an entire week of festivities. Ralph Lauren himself was reportedly personally involved in the design process, a rare level of hands-on attention from a designer of his stature for a single private client. Number 3. Serena Williams and Alexis Ohanian. Serena Williams' 2017 wedding to Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian in New Orleans featured a show-stopping Sarah Burton for Alexander McQueen ball gown, reportedly valued at $3.5 million, making it one of the most expensive wedding dresses ever worn. The strapless belted princess silhouette gown came complete with a dramatic cascading lace cape and a sweetheart neckline, accessorized with fine jewelry. And Williams did not stop there, changing into 2 additional gowns over the course of the celebration for a fairy tale-themed wedding that even included guests like Beyoncé and Kim Kardashian dancing well into the night. Notably, Burton had also designed Kate Middleton's royal wedding gown years earlier, meaning the same design hands are responsible for 2 of the biggest entries on this entire countdown. A genuinely remarkable through line running across both Hollywood and the British monarchy simultaneously. Williams has spoken openly in interviews about wanting her wedding to feel like a real-life fairy tale, complete with a Beauty and the Beast-themed first dance. And the McQueen gown was designed specifically to deliver that storybook feeling on an athlete's frame built for power, rather than the more delicate proportions couture houses typically design around. The iconic look has been praised and celebrated for years now, and given how rarely public figures disclose exact wedding dress costs at all, it will likely continue to be celebrated for a very long time to come. Number 2. Queen Letizia and King Felipe VI of Spain. Now we are entering true record-breaking territory. When journalist turned royal Letizia Ortiz married the future King Felipe VI of Spain in 2004, her gown, designed by veteran Spanish couturier Manuel Pertegaz, generated headlines around the world with cost estimates ranging up to $8 million, depending on the valuation of materials and craftsmanship involved. The ivory silk gown featured a high-standing collar, long sleeves, and a 14-foot train, hand-embroidered with real gold thread depicting fleur-de-lis and ears of wheat, symbols of the Spanish royal dynasty and fertility respectively, a level of detail that took a dedicated team of embroiderers months to complete entirely by hand. Pertegaz, who was once invited to succeed Christian Dior after Dior's death, before choosing to remain in Spain and build his own label instead, was 86 years old when he designed this dress, closing out his legendary career with what remains one of the most valuable wedding gowns ever created for an actual living bride anywhere in the world. The tiara Letizia wore that day, the Prussian tiara, was on loan from her mother-in-law, Queen Sophia, who had worn the very same piece at her own wedding decades earlier, adding a layer of generational continuity to a gown that was otherwise entirely new and entirely her own. Even now, well more than 20 years later, royal commentators still bring up the Pertegaz gown whenever a new royal wedding dress is unveiled anywhere in the world, simply to point out how far even the grandest, most expensive modern gowns still fall relative to Letizia's iconic record-setting look. Number 1. Wallis Simpson and Edward, Duke of Windsor. And here we are at the top of the list, with a dress that never had a massive price tag attached to it at all. And yet it might be the single most legendary wedding dress in modern history. When American socialite Wallis Simpson married the former King Edward VIII in 1937 at the Château de Condé in France, 6 months after he abdicated the British throne specifically so he could marry her, she did not wear white. Designed by the American couturier Mainbocher, the nipped-waist silk crepe gown was created in a custom shade the designer named Wallis Blue, reportedly to match her eyes, since it was considered improper at the time for a twice-divorced bride to wear traditional bridal white to her own wedding day. She completed the look with a matching blue silk crepe halo hat by Parisian millionaire Caroline Reboux, and gloves specifically designed to accommodate her emerald and diamond engagement ring without any bulk or discomfort. There was no known official price tag ever released, and honestly, there did not need to be. This is a dress inextricably linked to the abdication of a monarch. A king gave up his throne, his crown, and his entire birthright to marry the woman who wore this gown. And that historical weight makes it stand apart from every other dress on this list. The gown has since faded from its original blue to a pale ivory after being donated to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where it sits preserved today, a quiet, faded reminder that the most famous dress in Hollywood and royal history was never actually about the money at all. It was about what someone was willing to give up just to see it walk down the aisle toward him. The wedding itself was a small, largely private affair, attended by only a handful of guests, a stark contrast to the massive global broadcasts we now expect from royal weddings. And yet it remains one of the most written about, most analyzed weddings of the entire 20th century, precisely because of what it cost the groom personally rather than what it cost financially. Historians still debate whether Edward ever fully, truly understood what he was giving up when he made his choice. But Wallis Simpson, whatever else has been said about her over the many decades since, created a singular fashion moment that would echo through history forever, long after the scandal itself had faded from memory. Outro. And there you have it. The 40 most expensive, most legendary celebrity and royal wedding dresses of all time. From a $200 Zara suit, all the way up to a dress inextricably tied to a king abdicating his crown. What strikes me most, looking back over this entire list, is that the price tag almost never tells the whole story. Some of the cheapest dresses here left the biggest cultural mark, and some of the most expensive ones are remembered less for their exact cost and more for the story behind who wore them and why they mattered enough to still be remembered decades, or in some cases centuries, later. What ties all 40 of these together? Whether it is a Hollywood starlet, a pop star, a reality television icon, or an actual queen, is that every single one of them understood something about their wedding day that goes far beyond the dress itself. Something almost instinctive. That this was the one day the whole world would be watching, and they made absolutely certain the world would never ever forget what it saw. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for sticking with me through all 40 of these incredible looks. Let me know down in the comments which dress was your favorite, which one genuinely shocked you, and which bride you think deserved an even higher spot on this list than where I placed her. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next countdown. Because trust me, we have a lot more fashion history left to cover together. From Wallace Simpson's quiet blue silk crepe to Serena Williams' multi-million-dollar McQueen cape, from a $200 Zara suit to a gold thread gown that took a team of embroiderers months and months to finish, this list proves again and again that a wedding dress can be legendary for 100 completely different reasons. And honestly, that is exactly what makes fashion history so much fun to dig through. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the very next one.